Good evening, and welcome to June's edition of Poetry Square. I'm Diane Funston, YubaSutterArts&Culture's poet in residence, and this is Poetry Square. Welcome. We have poets tonight. I'll be reading, and then we have two poets, possibly three, reading after me, and we'll enjoy a nice evening of poetry. So here, where we are in California, in the Sacramento Valley, we're having triple-digit heat today and tomorrow, which is not unusual for us, but it's a little bit early. And this poem, as a lot of you know, I'm originally from upstate New York, and this poem is about the heat and the different kind of summer you have back there, where you actually have rain and thunderstorms. So this is called Heat. Steam rises steadily from pavement, up from shallow pools formed by the spontaneous storm moments ago. Thunder, lightning, warnings from nimbus clouds as they opened up for the short deluge of rain. All but a few remnant puddles evaporated. Cicadas sing louder with orange from heavy. Cicadas sing louder with energy from heavy air. Perspiration returns to the brow, hair, and thigh. Humid promises hang unspoken in wet air. A slight breeze hints at parting curtains. Should we? Shouldn't we? Fine for a summer shower. And I'm going to take my glasses off because I think I can read better without them. And I apologize. I'm recovered from COVID, and it's given me a little brain fog, so I do apologize for that. So this is called Climbers. Pumpkin vines wind their way across the yard. Springy tendrils cling to wrought iron fence around the redbud tree, corners of raised beds. Honeysuckle vines the arbor, thick woody feet tie strong leather laces. Yellow flowers bring bees, hummingbirds seduced by sweet siren song scent. Jasmine wears white lace. I weave shoots over and under iron trellis as it climbs the ladder. Heady scent entices butterflies and other fairies. I live in a garden of very social climbers. And today they're definitely, I was out very early this morning watering. This is called What We Have Planted. Black lava rock, white coral, picked up on a beach on the road to Hana on Maui's shoreline. One lone piece of oxidized lava, rusty from Haleakala's crater, stolen from a national park, packed up, sneakily hidden to escape the scrutinizing X-ray eyes of take nothing signs. I will plant a garden of lava and coral, a Zen garden in a carved wooden bowl. The lava, once moving, now formed. The coral, once teeming, now stiff. Black and white still life in brown olive wood bowl. One wet reddish lava rock reminds us of molten times. Push, force, pressure, convergence. But for now, crossed Pacific Ocean planted on coffee table. And back in the days of used to travel, we went, my husband and I, to Germany about 4 years ago and found my grandfather's hometown, which was in the former East Germany, and it took 6 trains to get there. And his house was still standing. It was a flat in a large apartment building. I believe they had 1 floor. And he was one of 17 kids. So picture 1 floor, very little backyard, 17 children. This is called Plowin, the name of the town. I won't speak of cherries or journeys, won't speak of the cafe in Germany, Cafe Trommel, where we drank good coffee, the place a rebuild of the one that was bombed in the war. Hitler spoke there, unlikely as calmly as you and I. We took 6 trains from Baden, hopped on and off like hobos, dragged luggage and ourselves up and down platforms, arriving in Plauen, the former East Germany, birthplace of my grandfather. We wound through streets, 90-degree heat wave in May, found the Rathaus, City Hall, no air conditioning, but a clerk who spoke English. I gave him names and dates. Grandpa was one of 17 children born to Max and Marie. Success. He was the 11th child. Baptism records, house address. The clerk pulled out a volume from 1950, told us if an address was not listed, the building was bombed and lost. The address, his address, was listed. We took a cab, stood in front of a large house divided into 3 flats, as it was back then. A short drive away, hills and sheep, stories he told about his time as a shepherd. We ended up back at Cafe Trommel, satisfied to dig into sauerbraten and heavy dark beer, talking wildly now of our journey, gesticulating with excited hands, holding hands of a day well done, finishing the day with dessert of brandy-soaked cherries. And this one is called Hollyhocks, which I'm kind of surrounded by in the front yard. And I have a wild one that grew itself next to our garbage cans. And it's double red. It's absolutely gorgeous. Velvet vessels with yellow stamens stand high on fuzzy stems, taller than my house. Negra, pure rich black like fancy dresses, magenta, bold and bright as tropical birds, a yellow so light it could be butter, white, fluttering like bloomers hung on wash lines. Bees buried deep, drunk on sweetness, dusted with pollen, they burrow, stay a while, tall sentinels of the garden. See comings and goings of people, of animals. High above the rooftop, they sway in wind, each new plant a surprise of color. My childhood had the stability of a lone hollyhock. Plain white flowers, it grew with neglect behind my grandfather's favorite place to put his webbed folding chair. Not fond of bees, he'd hack it down with a sickle, only to have it return with spiteful vengeance. Hollyhocks now are always welcome, far from where deer would eat them to the ground or where hard pan would stifle them. Here they spread and pop up and multiply. They are in the right environment to grow, like me, to flourish in full color, never again to be cut back. And I have 2 more. And this one is called, it's kind of a fun one. It's called A Rose is a Rose is a Rose. From the tingling in my legs, I knew something was happening. At first, a tickle, subtle and soft. In a bit of time, long shooting pain, I thought it was the frequent hiking and continued my daily routine. Then the prickly feeling began, more than the tickle. It had traveled up my legs, spreading down to arms and fingers. My chest felt tight, then my voice raspy, filled with concern, and then some. It was time to go to the emergency room. As I exited my car on the warm, sunny day, people gasped and pointed at me. From each ear, a lovely rose was blooming. Roses roped around my neck, through my sandals, buds at my toes. With a fit of coughing, a red rose opened full and wide from my lips. I was finally an American beauty and free from the thorns inside. And this last poem is called Planting Stone, Planting Iron. Planting statues in a garden, more planned than progressed. A sanctuary grows in silent welcome. It is good to be oneself here, one amidst guardians, angels, grinning gargoyles, a menagerie of animals, both real and fantastic. St. Francis overlooks his charges, the masculine sun, the feminine moon. Wind chimes amuse jolly old Buddha, music of the spheres. No one offends here. All are free to dream, to wander within the trees, all the colors of leaves, twisted, weaving branches, those who flower, those who do not. The iron filigree shapes arbors and gates. Some lead to nowhere, others lead to somewhere in the past. A shady grove, a waiting lover, a sanctuary where one can express their own nature in that garden of earthly delights. One must tend the garden carefully. A sanctuary must remain free. One who enters it must feel safe to speak in the language one needs to be heard. Those things universal: joy, pain, discovery, love, loathing. There is no other way. There is no right way. There is only freedom. Thank you. That's my portion of tonight's show. And now we'll be hearing from Bob Stanley.
Hi, I guess we're here. This is great. I'm honored to be part of Poetry Square. I've been a fan for a number of years, and I've got some poems for you. This first poem, I was taking a class. I was involved in a class on William Butler Yeats, the great Irish poet. I always loved him, and it was wonderful going back, reading his work again, and it kind of inspired me. So in a way, this is written to him, and in a way, written in his style. This is called Day of the Drum. I'd like to write a poem like yours, where all the filigreed sound fills up the page with a sound as sweet as pours the music from heavenly spheres. And I'd drink for a while from that cup. But we live in a day where the song is sharp, and damned be the song of the harp or the flute. We live in the day of the drum. When you rode back from a day in the boat, you sang with the choir in evening time, and Tommy and Will would laugh at your note as your voice rose up. You could hear it float above all the others to carry the line. But now we live where the song is sharp, and damned be the song of the harp or the flute. We live in the day of the drum. Good reasons, some say. We've all moved on, and the once loved cadence is over and done. But I'll stand by the quiet of the shore, where the heron moves not till the setting sun, and never in such silence call myself poor. Though today we live where the songs are sharp, and damned be the song of the harp or the flute. We come to the day of the drum. So that's my little rhyming piece there. What's the difference between a poem, he asked, and a what? I responded. Well, suppose you're going on a long drive into the desert, the sun setting behind you, casting wild reds and purples above the dark silhouetted mountains in the west. Is the drive just a drive or an epic into the deepest reaches of your... Okay, I get it. A poem isn't just a car ride. It's got tail fins or better speakers than a regular car, and you can hear the bass booming from half a mile away. Well, yes and no. It's the drive, not the car per se, or maybe it's the drive and the car. Oh, great. I think you stole that from somewhere. Well, yeah, that's part of it too. This is a poem I wrote when I was in China. We also went back to visit my wife's family's heritage. Kind of what Diane was talking about reminded me of our trip to China. But this was after we went to the cemetery and saw where the family was buried. It just started raining and raining. I've never been in a rainstorm. This is called The Flood. When gate is wide, the river pours without barrier, and rain and wind combine to force down mountains into valleys, and streams converge, leaping as tigers, snowy brown, white as sky has forgotten blue, white as life. This the flood, this the taste of knowing, calling rivers into the song of abandon, of emergence, of arrival. Knowing without seeking, finding without knowing, what this river will become, I cannot imagine. What is beyond control? What is beyond? Here's a poem I wrote in April 2020 when we were all in that limbo of, I don't have anything to do, but what do I do with all this time, right? The first couple months of the pandemic. And this is called With All This Solitude. With all this solitude, I could learn Chinese, work on the tones carefully, and be ready for the trip back to Hangzhou. I could work on jazz piano, get the left hand working with the right for that Fats Waller stride sound, or learn to sing E natural, effortless, like Sinatra. I could make my own beer and drink it. I could order banjo picks from banjopicks.com. I could learn the songs of the birds, know the titmouse from the house finch unseen. I could read Ulysses straight through and know what to say about it. I could clean the garage. Actually, I couldn't clean the garage. But I could plant flowers, impatiens in shade, petunias in sun, and when summer returns, I could water them every day. I could write a letter to Mike at the prison. Mike, who already knew what lockdown means. I could finally learn to hit the backhand drive, to be firm in keeping the radical topspin grip, utilizing the whole body, the knees, the hips, in changing the direction of the ball with weight shift and grace, creating the rapid downward arc of the ball. I could write with both care and abandon. I could tell tales, both true and untrue, so that you, dear reader, might feel moved, might turn your life towards the sun. Ask a new question. Find faith in what is both known and unknown. I could walk across the river on the old bridge, the lost bridge, the one that goes through the mist just after sunset when there is still light in the sky. I could stand at the midpoint, river coursing below, sky coursing above, and drink in the flowing directions. I could learn what it is to love and be loved. I could be alive. With all this solitude from 2020. This is a poem for Mike Owens. Mike Owens has been in prison for 25 years. He actually lived in Marysville for a while. He grew up in North Sacramento. Got into some trouble when he was a young man. He's almost 50 now. This is called What You Missed. You missed Netflix. You missed Nintendo. You missed Twitter feeds, BuzzFeed, and K-pop. A whole generation of hip-hop. You missed Kanye, and you missed Taylor Swift. You missed the opioid epidemic, though unfortunately you were part of the one that went before. You missed iPods and iPads, iMacs and iMaxes. You missed Desert Storm and Google Maps, Google Earth and Google Drive. You missed Amazon Prime, Amazon Smile, Amazon Echo, Alexa, and Siri. You missed Hulu, but not haiku. You found poetry and told your story. How you missed out on childhood, how you've lived in prison since 1997, locked away from technology, away from the media, away from the waves of pop culture, and that's where you found what was missing. You found a man hungry to read, hungry to write, hungry to make a difference. Though you missed the action while missing in action, you really missed nothing. You got what you needed. That's for Mike Owens. And I'm going to read a poem by Mike Owens from his book, The Way Back, published by Random Lane Press. And so Mike is still in prison and still writing, taking classes. This is called A Litany for Folsom. It's by Mike Owens, A Litany for Folsom. I praise my life in prison. I praise the cool comfort of the fan on 70-degree mornings. I praise the strength of the coffee bean crumbled in the bottom of my cup, awaiting the chance to give its gift. I praise the nearness of Sacramento, the consolation of knowing family is just up the highway. I praise the ancestors standing on my altar shelf. I praise each one of the 37 steps of peaceful sunrise between my cell block and the work area. I praise my secret toast connection. I praise quality office chairs with lumbar support, the job and responsibility, and the solitude of my workstation. I praise Windows 07 and the publishing wizard. I praise my furrowed brow, the weight of my concentration upon the monitor. I praise my words, the inky black ravens who convey my soul far beyond the reach of this fragile flesh. This fragile flesh. I praise the end of another busy shift. I praise 15 minutes of heart space, a phone call to my wife. I praise junk TV, unhealthy snacks, and high blood pressure meds. I praise fatigue. I praise a day well spent. So that's a poem by Mike Owens, who is in Mule Creek Prison in Ione, California. And we published his book at Random Lane Press in 2018. It's been a few years now. So if you're interested in that book, go to randomlanepress.com. And if you're interested in my work, I've got a couple of books too. So send me an email. You can send it to randomlanepress@gmail.com. Thank you so much. This was fun. I hope I'm looking forward to hearing Molly, and it was great to hear Diane read. So enjoy Poetry Square and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Oh, it's so nice to hear your voice, Bob. Bob is a very old poet friend, and I don't know that I've seen you in 18, 20 years. And it's just lovely to hear your voice. And Diane, I was very happy to hear yours also, and to be included in this lovely event, even though it might be very warm outdoors. We can still read poems indoors. My mother has been sneaking into some of my poems. So I'm going to read you things from that I've written in the last 12 months. And if you notice that she's there, that's what's going on. She's been gone for 22 years. And often I don't think of her at all. And then sometimes she sneaks into everything I'm doing. This is called Nomenclature. Somewhere online, I scrolled past it. A film about children forced to live without internet for a whole year. The horror. And internet, what someone's 5-year-old insisted was her new friend's name. The confused parent, learning only after weeks it was Antoinette, which would have made my mother laugh and laugh. Tony to her friends, Antoine at home, unrelated to the French queen, but the third in 3 generations, back when the daughters of whalers passed names down like bone china brought over on sailing ships, packed in sawdust. No Sierras back then, no meadowlarks, titles plucked from nature by hippies, though it's an old tradition. Fisk bestowed by Vikings who prowled Northumberland's bleak coast and found my forebears fishing. Once everyone was named for what they did: Cooper, Taylor, Smith, or where they lived, Sussex, Saint Valery, or who raised them, Robertson, Gudbrandsdottir. No Coblas or Githioras on our street. Blame enslavement and Ellis Island. History survives or disappears in language, while we go on making dinner, reading novels, driving the yellow school bus with its familiar black block letters, carefully dusting a Q-tip with apple blossom pollen, and scraping it off on the pistils of adjacent blooms when the bees have not yet found your rooftop garden in San Miguel. They'll get there. Give them a month or 2. As long as they live, and that's the big question, nothing can deter a bee. My mother taught me this, from finding sweetness. The Isles of Shoals. This is a teeny little group of islands right off the coast where Maine and New Hampshire meet each other, about 6 miles out into the ocean. No idea why I remembered just now my mother waitressing on Star Island before I was born. The romance of names, of memory. Summers at sea and the waves singing their song to the 5-pointed shore. The flat blue Atlantic in late July light, and my teenaged mother bearing white plates piled with cod and hake to the tables, pitchers of water and tea. Her dimples flash as the boy she likes makes the sound of a duck over the PA whenever she walks through the crowded room. Families, squealing children, her minister father somewhere, nodding, looking concerned, her mother everywhere mending the minor disasters, raising an eyebrow, giving a smile. So much innocence, promise. Now they're gone, the people we come from, taking their stories and leaving us with just a whiff of salt in morning fog. So it all could have been a dream. Except here on the counter, a postcard Childe Hassam painted in 1915 of poppies on the Isles of Shoals. Childe Hassam is one of our famous American Impressionist painters. I was going to tell you something else. Oh, Star Island is a long-standing Unitarian summer place. And my grandfather was a Unitarian minister. Birthday blues. You have to be careful the night before, when your Wi-Fi's down, not to go into old photo files and come across the last sweet days of your dead cat, sister to the one who just bit your shoulder, which is a sign he's hungry, though he won't eat anything you give him this time, and when leaving the kitchen, goes to sleep by himself on the floor where morning sun will enter the house first, though it's midnight now. And does he even remember mornings? Or does he see his own shape there, which you cannot? Sorry, human of no imagination and uninteresting varieties of cat food, whose lap has been rejected and whose shoulder aches after 6 months of regular gouging. Something his sister never once did, and she died in 4 days. It was awful, but quick, while he's stretching this out, season after season, letting you feel the loss while he's still here. Not on purpose, of course. Cats aren't long-term vindictive. It's God who gives you this kind of pain and also makes you wait for it. Waving. Maybe I don't try hard enough. Maybe the ones I admire have skill beyond my grasp, their synapses firing faster, beating greater hearts. I am puny. I am restricted. Alas, the self looking back at the self, while missiles fire and hospitals explode around previous common suffering. Could there be anything useful to say? And someone to say it? Anyone? Everyone. Breathe in sorrow, exhale dignity, loving kindness. To stop a missile, you stop the plane refueling, the burr of metal on metal to shape the housing. You don't extrude or load. You pay the makers a living wage to make something else. It is rocket science. It's simple, like the shape of the nurse's forearm blown above us, a bird, a signal. The hand looks like it's waving. Those with money don't need more money. A seaport. They have plenty of shoes. The killing is made general, is made abstract to blind us. In a poem, you earn your abstractions. The living human mind comprehends specifics, a breath, an arm, that bullet shape. Now we are located. Full flower moon lunar eclipse. It was me stepping out the front door every 6 or 8 minutes to look up into a cloudy sky that darkened and opened. Is that a star or reflected streetlight? Where is east? Where does the moon rise at this time of year anyway? And why do I stay indoors when it isn't raining? My eyes are beginning to fail me. I should look harder at everything now to remember it. I have lost my way since the virus arrived to contain us. I have lost my way. Traveler, said Machado in Spanish, there is no path. The path is made by walking. Yet I do not walk. Whatever force holds me still from childhood holds me tightly, saved me, although now I suffer that salvation, and what a long time ago it was too. Think of the trees now casting shade that I have planted. Think of the miles I've swum. Petrichor. This is a name that I've used so much on social media that I think a whole generation of people now know what it means because they had to go look it up because I wouldn't explain it. It's a great word. Petrichor. The way a rare night of rain in a bad drought year under wildfire smoke will clean your mind of all its low-lying, unacknowledged panic, and you'll walk out at 4 a.m, face turned to the glory of it. Tears you haven't cried in a decade slipping down your cheek, your neck, into the collar of the nightgown you bought to make the pandemic more tolerable. Cotton with pockets and no % polyester, so in summer heat it doesn't prickle. Thunder cracks to the west, and a theoretical fear of lightning, but you can't see any, and the rain's so cool, the smell so fine, you let yourself forget new starts for a moment. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Pray the rain takes some of the flames down 30 miles over, flattens the embers, glues the swirling ash to whatever surface it falls on, shatters the bright heart of that 100,000-acre burn, sparing the breathing beings that are left and the 3-generation log cabins, old town canoes upended on docks at Fallen Leaf Lake, the brown trout dozing deep in the crevices, dreaming of mayflies, the lookout towers from which a sharp-eyed kid might spot new wisps at dawn if the clouds lift out of those tricky canyons. Last year, I wrote a very short poem about a very long day, and that day is coming up again to surprise us. And it always startles me that when I think of summer beginning is when the sun changes direction and it starts to get darker every day. The longest day, the shortest night, the planets tilt reversing, tipping us toward dark again. How hard to think of it as squash leaves broaden overnight. The baby globes of early girl begin to swell and snap peas crunch between our teeth. The work of life, to hold it all, arrival and departure both. Somewhere the birth of hummingbirds in tiny spittle-softened nests. Somewhere the death of those we love the most. Thank you so much for listening to us and for loving poetry, and that's all I have to say.
Well, that wraps up our June 2022 Poetry Square. And I want to thank my guest, Bob Stanley and Molly Fisk, for an excellent reading. And we just have the 2 this evening. And next month for July, we will be hearing from Susan Woolbridge, G.S. Murphy, and Maggie Martin. So until then, read some poetry, write some poetry, and enjoy your summer. Thank you.